What is going on, Pirate Nation? Welcome in to Jungle Tales, the debut episode. We're glad you've tuned in. Be sure to follow us on social media on X and Instagram. We can be found at Jungle Tales Pod, the same on YouTube, and then on Facebook, Spotify, SoundCloud. You can find us by simply searching Jungle Tales in ECU Baseball Podcast. But on this debut episode, batting leadoff, if you will, I'd like to welcome in somebody that's no stranger around Greenville, and then she certainly covered the Pirates for years, and I guess maybe a decade plus for Bonesville.net. Welcome in to talk about her new book that I say new. It was released back in the middle of April. Never Take This for Granted. Trip around the diamond with college baseball's most passionate or dedicated fan base, and that is Bethany Bradsher. Bethany, we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Bubba. It's such a privilege to be the first guest. I love being the leadoff batter. And during my softball career, I used to love to swing at the first pitch. So I don't know. There's something there. So it seems to be appropriate that I would be the leadoff of your podcast.
So before we dive into this book, Never Take This for Granted, like I said, around the diamond with college baseball's most devoted fan base. I messed that up a little bit on the open
Oh, it's
there,
okay.
but yeah, there we go. One of the reasons, obviously, is a natural to have you on the podcast, period. But the reason I wanted to have you on right now, I saw a couple weeks ago on social media there, the latter part of June, you're running a promotion that if you purchase the book via ECUBaseballbook.com, then 50% of the proceeds will go to ECU Baseball's NIL collective, and that's the 23 Club.
Right. And for me, it was really just a matter of being invested in the program. It takes on a lot of forms. And I'm a fan myself. I'm an author. This was my 16th book. So I've written about all kinds of things, but I can't think of a time I've written about something I'm as passionate about as a sports fan as this book, because I live, a couple miles from Clark LeClaire, and I love to be in the jungle and have, gone to a number of regionals, had season tickets this year. And so I thought, well, I wanted to tell the stories to give what I feel like a spotlight that is long overdue on this program and this fan base. But are other ways to support. So when I heard Cliff Godwin on an interview talking about the 23 Club recently, I thought, this is something that it's just a perfect fit for the book to help support the future growth of the program and to make sure that the players who have been loyal, who are there, get the support and the backing that they need financially.
Yeah, I know Coach Godwin. Obviously, the players really appreciate it, and I mean, it is an excellent fit, and it's an excellent read from everything I've heard. I have not had the chance to dive in myself, but have several friends that have purchased the book and have raved over what they've read, and a couple folks said that they read it in one or two sittings. But before we talk more specifically about this book, just tell Pirate Nation, for those Pirate fans who aren't familiar with you, what's your background with ECU? I know you moved to Greenville, I guess, back in '99?
That's right. Moved to Greenville 1 month before Hurricane Floyd swept in. So we had quite a, initiation to the area with that disaster. But, we survived it. So we've been here 25 years. And through the early years, I was raising a bunch of kids and they were really little. So I was doing a little bit of freelance work, mostly in the ECU football area. But as time went on, I started to get more and more engaged in ECU writing, like you mentioned, with Bonesville.net. I worked for a couple different Pirate Club magazines, ECU's alumni magazine called East. I've written for Glimpse, which is the Chamber of Commerce publication here in Pitt County. So it's just been a hodgepodge. And then in 2010, I started writing books. My first book, as many people know, was Coaching Third, the Keith LeClaire story. So I feel like the Never Take This for Granted is kind of a bookend with Coaching Third in terms of the telling the stories of the ECU baseball program. Obviously, Coach LeClaire's story has to do with the early growth of the program and the beginning of Omaha being kind of the goal for these young men. And Never Take This for Granted, I really focused on the big moments on and off the field since the turn of the century. So they go together really well. In fact, my publisher tried to make sure that they were the same size and they kind of literally can go right next to each other on your shelf.
And when you moved to Greenville, you talk about it being right prior to that '99 football season. So I guess we had just completed year 2 of the Keith LeClaire era, and the Pirates hosting in 2001, but number one seeds in 99 and 2000 at LSU and Louisiana Lafayette, respectively. So I know during those years, especially with having younger kids and so forth, you weren't as plugged in on the baseball side of things as you have been the last several. But talk about getting to know Lynn LeClaire, and then maybe even coach a little bit, and then obviously Audrey and JD.
Sure. So it's one of these things. I think if you live in this community and you follow the Pirates, you knew the story. For me, on a personal basis, I was in a Bible study with Lynn LeClaire, so I got to know her. Went to some events where Keith was appearing after he got sick. I ran in a 10K a couple of times that was part of his ALS charity where he was in attendance. And so while I wasn't covering the baseball team that much during those years, I had friends, and you and I both know Chuck Young, who was the founder and director of SportWorks Ministry. And so I knew Chuck well, and Chuck was kind of my connection when it sort of became evident that someone needed to tell Keith's story. And I felt like I had the proximity and I understood what it meant to people. So I was able to go to Chuck and then in turn after that to Lynn. And that was I started the process of researching that book in '09. So it was 3 years after Keith's death. I really think we needed some time to pass because the emotions were still close to the surface. And I don't think that's a story that you can just really get from people and talk with people about in the months immediately following a loss like that. I think everyone had time to reflect on his, impact on their lives and on the program. And anyway, but even so, there were quite a few grown men who I interviewed who, could barely get through the interview because of the memory. So grateful that I got to be part of telling that story and the people that I was connected with through it. I just think it's important. Both books, I've had people tell me that they cried and want to get a hug, and their books are very different, but they both capture the essence and the spirit of this program and what makes it special. And while one book is sort of, it's sad, that my new book isn't at all sad, but it still brought out a lot of emotions in the fans who have read it. So that's been interesting to me. And it really bears out what I believe to be true as a fan of the program. But I've loved to get that response from those who've read the book.
Yeah, before we move on and talk more about Never Take This for Granted, as far as coaching third, the Keith LeClaire story, when you take a look at that book, it's obviously, it pays tribute and respect to everything he did at East Carolina, but then, it has devotions that he wrote with his eye gaze machine, which was very emotional for myself, reading those. And then, that's a book that I have read, in its entirety multiple times. And that's a book that all ECU baseball players, when they enter the program, that obviously Cliff Godwin has them read for multiple reasons.
Yeah. In fact, I just delivered some books over there to the baseball offices last week because of that reason. They always put the book in the hand of new players. What I didn't know until I was researching the new book is that they don't just put it in the players' hands. They require them to read it, and the players have to do a little oral book report in front of some of their teammates, which I did not know. It just amazed me. But for an author to hear that and to know that the stories that I got to tell and Keith's legacy lives on in that way, Cliff is determined that those players are going to know the history and know what moved and inspired him and brought him to this point. It's also important. So I'm really grateful for that.
Kind of honing in on this book and just the process, obviously it's a very time demanding thing. And this is why you had not written books, prior to, I guess you
When
said,
I had little babies and
yeah,
toddlers.
right. When
Right.
you had kids that
Yeah.
are the age that mine are. But, with that being the case, just, I know there were multiple directions you considered before you honed in on Pirate Nation and the relationship with the jungle for the ECU baseball program. So, what were those options, and then
Yeah.
how did you pick the one you did?
It was kind of funny. I had a friend who's in the book, Sharon Justice, and she had said, I think it's time for you to write another ECU baseball book. And that was probably the end of the 22 season. And I thought, I kind of mulled it over and I thought, okay, I'm not the first person that thought of this, but 2023, number 23, I was like, okay, 2023 season would be a great season to follow, to really be embedded and to follow all the ins and outs, each game and to really be on the inside. So I made that plan. And of course was thinking, well, if they do make Omaha in 2023, I'll write that story, the story of the season. And so I got a press credential. It had been a while since I'd been a working media at games, and sat in the press box for a little while. And then I realized that I'd really rather be out in the jungle where I normally sit, and I started interviewing some of the longtime fans, and just collecting stories. And I think what I realized is the heart of what I wanted to tell was in the fans' stories and the relationships between fans and players. That's a really important theme in this book. So I think about May, we still didn't know what was going to happen with the postseason, but it felt like, okay, maybe they'll make it, maybe they won't. But it didn't feel, it's never a sure thing, but it didn't feel like it was. And so I started to reconsider the angle. And what I, landed on is this, the book I want to tell is about the culture around this program, really the aspects of the program that don't change when the players change. And I've told a lot of people this, but my husband and I have been watching the TV series Welcome to Wrexham about the football team in Wales that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney bought. And that series is completely honed in on the fans. You get to know the fans, and you get to know their emotions and their devotion to the team and the history of it. And I feel like if they made a limited series of my book, it would be a lot like that one. I guess they've already done it for a different sport. But for me, it has just really reinforced how important fan stories are, because it has to do with community and with their families and their friendships, and really gives so much meaning. It's so much beyond what's happening on the field or a court. And I really love the chance to be able to tell that. There are kids in the book for whom Pirate Nation and the jungle has become their community. And so I just was grateful, because I think there's so many things that go beyond just what you think of as sports that I was able to capture in telling the story this way.
Yeah, you think about the Deal Days, obviously,
Mhm.
Bryson, or as they call him, Bubba,
Yeah,
Deal Day, and then you have, Reed Haddock, and
yeah.
then obviously the Plumbers have, little children as well, and
Jungle
so
kids.
so you seen
Yeah.
funny pictures of Jared. He'll be videoing with one hand and then holding his daughter with the other hand.
Right, right. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, those kids, I told a Reed story recently, Reed Haddock. He was out there in the jungle during a big moment. And sometime in May, a Pirate home run or something. And I was standing right next to him, and he looked at me and he goes, "Never take this for granted." And I have just laughed. And we saw him actually at a Yard Gnomes game the other night. And he went to sit and talk about the book. And, those kids, it just means everything. They are counting down. Well, so am I, until baseball season starts. I know you are too. And it has everything to do with the people and the way they're treated out there, and the way they're made to feel like they're part of something significant. So that's really special.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool video that, Reed's dad, Trey, put on social media back during COVID, I guess it was,
Hmm.
with, or it may have even been since COVID, but, Reed was reciting all the baseball players and, identifying them. I'm trying to
By
remember if
number.
it was by their walk-up song, or he just calling
Walk-up
numbers.
song,
Yeah,
number.
number.
He's walking statistician. He knows it all. I mean, he was giving me every detail of a game played when he was 5, when I was at his house, and I was like, "Wait, how old were you when this game happened?" And at one point, he also gave me the play-by-play of what he believes is going to happen when the Pirates make Omaha. He didn't tell me which year, but he told me who their super regional opponent's going to be and how the game's going to go. And I thought, I am never deleting this tape, because knowing Reed, it'll happen this way. So, remains to be seen.
And then it was so special, him being able to provide that walk-up song for Jake Agnos,
Yeah, yeah,
when I first heard it, I was like, "Hold on," I said, "Hold on," I said, what's that walk-up song?" And then obviously, I connected the dots there with Reed.
yeah. That was awesome. So, just the way the players who stay, who really understand what Cliff's trying to do, and they bought into the culture. They also understand what it means for these kids and these fans, and they want to be part of that, and they connect in a very, some of them have second families in Greenville, and it's never going to change no matter where they go. There's a family featured in the book, the Cherries, and their daughter Haley was really close to Josh Moylan, and I know they've been on the road to travel to see him at least a couple of times. And he plays in New York. It's not an easy trip. So
Exactly.
it's been amazing to me to see that the relationships really endure even when the players move on.
And for folks, if you're just now tuning in, later on in the show, we'll have a pro pirate report. We'll take a look at those pirates like Alec Burleson or Jeff Hoffman, who's just named to the National League All-Star team,
Yeah.
the second consecutive terrific season with the Philadelphia Phillies. But right now we're visiting with Bethany Bradsher, the author of "Never Take This for Granted." And Bethany, you talk about visiting with a variety of Pirate fans. I mentioned the Deal Days and the Plumbers, but I know someone that you got to know not too long after moving to Greenville, I believe, was Tony Brown.
Mhm.
And talk about that relationship with Tony, who was known or is known as the mayor of the jungle.
Well, Tony Brown is one of one. Anybody who knows Tony knows that. His daughter Leslie was my babysitter when we first moved to Greenville. So before she was in grad school, and she babysat for my kids before she ever had her kids. Then eventually my oldest daughter babysat for her children. So it goes full circle. But I'm very close to their family, and have known Tony for a long time. And so he was a natural in with Tony and Charlie Martin. I met Charlie when we first arrived in town as well. Charlie Martin Sr. I told the three generations of Pirate fans, which was Charlie Martin Sr. and Charlie Martin Jr. and Cole, who is 16, and the three of them talking about all three generations and just how that family, what it means to them. Charlie and Jen Martin's house was the first place I ever went that had all purple and gold decorations on their Christmas tree when I first moved here, and I had never seen anything like that. I couldn't believe it. So it was so much fun. A lot of the people I interviewed for this book were already friends, but to sit down, I sat with those two guys at Sam Jones, and to hear their stories and to hear what it was like at Harrington Field, and the very first time they ever stood out there on the cinder block and started talking trash to a center fielder, and cooking on a grill, and I mean, sitting under the trees, and just something was born at that point that they could never have conceived of what it is now. I'm sure some of those old timers kind of wish for the smallness and the purity of back in the old days, but it has become something beyond what they could have dreamed. But I think a lot of the standards and even the rules, like they try to keep it clean, at least especially center field, left field, where there are a lot of families, and they'll enforce those jungle rules and say, this isn't the way we do it in the jungle. If fans try to cross a line, and that doesn't mean there's not a whole lot of good natured ribbing of opposing players, as anybody who's been out there knows. But I have found that the opposing players, for the most part, love it, because it means that these fans love the game and care and are invested, and they would rather be out there, getting heckled by a bunch of jungle kids than have a silent outfield section.
Right, like you say, for the most part, it's not personal, and even when they do mention personal things, at that point, they've kind of developed a rapport with that left fielder, and
Yeah.
most of the time, they take it in stride. But then sometimes, you have those guys that don't know how to handle it.
And the right fielders, by and large, if any opposing coaches are watching this who are on our schedule next year, you might want to put your thickest skin guys in right field, because that's where the students are, including a big contingent of Pirate football players. And they don't play, when it comes to their trash talking. So it might get a little bit rougher on that side occasionally, but still good natured for the most part.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson and guys like that out there, letting them have it. I know there
Yeah.
was a video on social media that kind of made its rounds, and I know Clip Brock on Pirate Radio used it as a funny soundbite on some of their programming. But it had Sam Danka, big
Mhm.
defensive end for the Pirates, rolling in on regional weekend with a few words, nothing out of line, but he was just making sure Wake Forest knew it was going to be a long weekend.
Yeah, yeah. And Deontay Johnson has an amazing story that is in the book. Well, one of my favorite moments was contacting the sports information at ECU, Malcolm Gray, and saying, "Hey, can I interview a football player during football season, but not about football?" And they were like, "Sure, okay." And that was great. And I promised I wouldn't talk at all about football to Deontay, and we didn't. We talked about baseball and every other sport at ECU, because it's his goal to go see them all. Just such a great young man he really admires every other athlete on campus and wants to see what they're doing. But he told a great story about Cam Clonch, who was his buddy from freshman year dorm, I think, and they were so excited when he came up, and he was shouting at the right fielder, "My boy Clonch is going to hit one right over your head. He's going to hit one right over your head." And he started the video rolling, and sure enough, at that moment, Cam Clonch launches one right over the right fielder's head, and just Deontay's reaction. I think that's another one of those kind of epic viral videos, because it all happened exactly like he laid it out.
Right. Yep. Nothing like calling your shot, especially like that when you have the camera rolling. I guess you got to say it enough, right?
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah. But there's so many traditions that come along with the jungle, the K boards in center field, the megaphones, the jungle jumps, both the individual and the laps around the warning track,
Mhm.
as well as others, the purple gold cheers. What are what are some of your, your favorite memories, and then also traditions that are carried on from year to year in the
Have some visitors come. My sister came from South Texas, and then my daughter lives in Richmond. Her roommate came down, loves baseball, and just to see it through someone's eyes who was there for the first time, and to see what they loved. And with my sister, we made sure we stayed till the end of a victory and all the way through to all the jungle jumps, so she could see what all that was about. I love when the left field jungle megaphone fans, become buddies with the opposing left fielder and give them a care package. That's just, I interviewed a couple of those guys, and they just couldn't believe it. They were dumbfounded, that these fans were giving them some snacks and a box and wrote their name on it. And so that part just, it really amazes me. Jungle Player of the Year, they give an award where you have to pay $1 to vote, and they get their name on a plaque, and you're paying for the plaque basically, to vote. That's amazing. And I have to say this, I love the jungle. I'm a jungle person, jungle fan, but I really was struck by the fans I met who sit all over the field. So you've got mega fans with loud voices and dominant presences in every part of the field. You've got Todd Howell out there, kind of, behind the catcher a little bit toward first base, Chu Justice over toward first base, Mike Radford over towards third, and others who you kind of just could draw a line around. And in every section, there are devoted fans who love their community where they sit, love to be part of things out there, and they are very loyal to their area. So I think that's special. And I tried to make sure the book wasn't just about the jungle, even though, we know there are some amazing stories and people want to know the history and the significance of those traditions.
Yeah, like you say, with Todd Howe, I guess probably the best dressed heckler at Clark LeClaire, right?
His arms are going all the
Yeah.
time. His arms are going all the time.
So
Upper body
a
workout.
lot of times I'll stand on the concourse there right behind home plate, and
Yeah.
so I definitely have gotten to know Todd over the last couple years, and
Yeah.
had the chance to sit and chat with him last year at the Charlottesville Regional. But definitely a great pirate and even better human being. But
Really.
I know you had the chance. You talk about discussing pirate baseball and the roles of different individuals. You had the chance to even catch up with a custodian, right?
Yeah, Phil Moore. So the way that story happened is, as I interviewed some former players who had had some difficult life events happen while they were at ECU. So Turner Brown, his family lost their home, and their house burned to the ground while he was a player at ECU. He's from Whiteville. And then, I was talking to Zach Agnos, but both Zach and Jake, their father died of COVID, as many people remember, in 2021. Nico Agnos, who was very close to Cliff and to so many people in the program. And when those players told me their story, they kept mentioning Phil. They'd say, "Oh, and then Phil was right there to give me a hug," or "Phil just sat with me in the locker room when I got this news." And I was like, "Who is Phil?" And Phil is the custodian who cleans, the baseball offices and the stadium. And he's always working, afternoons and evenings during the season. But I asked if I could interview him, and it was just such a treat because he's really almost like the emotional support coach. He looks out for the guys. He considers them all his little brothers. And if somebody's off or they're having a hard time or stressed out about school, Phil's the one often that's going to pick up on it and pull them aside and just check on them. So just to see that there are these untold stories behind the scenes that make this program special, and that was one of them. And I love seeing ever since the book came out, I've just enjoyed seeing him out there at Clark LeClaire, and he just has a big grin. And I just think it was really a special thing for his story to be included.
Yeah, it's awesome the players have someone like that they can confide in. You mentioned
Mhm.
Nico Agnos. He has the bench out in right center field. You
Yeah.
know, a picture that many Pirate fans saw. I think Stephen Igo of hoistthecolors.net, put that out there on social media, either he or Patrick Mason, with the reflector of Carter Cunningham, who was a neighbor or is a neighbor of the Agnos family.
Right.
And
Mhm.
obviously someone that was extremely close was Zach and Jake and the
Mhm.
rest of that family. Going there, in one of his toughest moments after the Pirates were eliminated from this year's Greenville Regional.
Absolutely. Out there on that bench. So, I just think there's strings of people like that. There's legacy, and there's coaching trees, and brothers that come, and we just keep, look at the Norby boys and what they're doing, and what Ethan meant to this postseason. I just feel like he's just got he loves the moment. He wants the ball, and he just kind of typifies what I think a Pirate player really is like in terms of grit and passion for the place. And obviously Connor is lighting it up at the next level. So I love those stories, and I think you can really tell when a younger brother comes. It's like, oh, this is something special. Or a neighbor like Carter. They really he got it when he arrived here. He didn't have to
Right.
be told.
And you hear about the relationships that these guys develop. I mean, not obviously not only coach player, but then also uh, yeah, they're not technically, friends. It's not something like that until after their playing days are done. But the way they confide in Coach Godwin, and there's so many things like that instance that you described, as far as Turner Brown and
Mhm.
his family losing their home in a fire, the Nico Agnos situation,
Yeah,
Parker Bird,
yeah,
just
yeah, for
what
sure.
an unbelievable young man. Back in
Mhm.
mid-February of this year, you had his first AB, and I don't think there were many dry eyes at Clark LeClaire that night.
Unbelievable. It was an unbelievable moment. I've become friends with his mom, Mitzi, as well. And a group of us are actually going down to New Bern tomorrow night to see Parker play with the Southpaws, which I'm really excited about. So, yeah, he always understood what this program was about when he committed as a young high school player. But you can't ever know what is going to be in your future. But I think just the way that this fan base rallied around him, not just raising money, but just supporting him and his family, and the way Greenville has become their home. It's been amazing to see. So, Parker's story is something that I think tells the story of this place and this culture almost more than anything that we've experienced in the past few years.
No doubt, it speaks to his faith and
Mhm.
just the tremendous young man he is. Like, something so tragic, and he's turned it into such a tremendous positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hats off to him
Yeah.
and his family, for the way they've handled things. And it's great to see Parker continuing to make progress. And like you said, he's done some nice things for the New Bern Southpaws
Yeah.
in the old North State League, playing at a historic ballpark there in downtown New Bern, and that
Mhm.
has been renovated. So I definitely encourage all Pirate fans in the area to go check that out. But before we wrap this up, we appreciate a half an hour of your time,
Yeah,
Bethany.
of course.
Tell folks once again, as far as the promotion you're running with,
Mhm.
never take this for granted.
Sure. So if you buy the book on the website, ecubaseballbook.com, by August 15th, then 50% of all the proceeds will go to the 23 Club. That offer also stands if you live in Greenville and you know me and you know how to get in touch with me. We can meet up and I can get a book to you. And so you don't have to order and pay shipping. So reach out to me by social media or my website, which is just my name, BethanyBradsher.com. And we can make that happen. I can meet you somewhere in Greenville and get you a signed copy. There are books available at a number of retailers around Greenville. That does not apply for the 50% to the 23 Club, but a lot of great retailers that carry the book as well. And all of that information is available at ecubaseballbook.com.
And then also, as far as coaching third, if someone has never read that and would like a copy of it, tell folks where they can buy it as well.
Yes. So the stores that I know have coaching third right now are Kaufman's Menswear, It's So Right, which is an Arlington Village Shops in Greenville, and UBE. Those three I know have it. It's also on Amazon. Both books are on Amazon. And I don't know if I have any coaching thirds at my house, but my publisher is sending some more as we speak. So soon I'll have some here.
Excellent. So Pirate Nation, two great reads. If you're a Pirate baseball fan, or really even if you're not a Pirate baseball fan, especially, in the case of coaching third, the Keith LeClaire story, I highly recommend getting those books. Definitely look forward to reading. Never take this for granted myself here in the coming weeks. But Bethany, I appreciate your time. How can folks follow you on social media? Because I know you're there as well.
I have a weird name, so it's easy. It's just my name everywhere. So Instagram, X, Facebook, just Bethany Bradsher. And I want a full book review after you read the book, Baba, on your
Yep,
podcast.
sounds good. Yeah,
Mhm.
we'll definitely make that happen. But
Okay.
again, appreciate the time, and we'll certainly have you back on the show down the road.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it so much. Best of luck with the new podcast.
Thank you. Take care.
Mhm.
Pirate Nation, that is Bethany Bradsher. I really appreciate her time. Did an excellent job with coaching third, and of course, most recently, never take this for granted. Kind of shifting gears, taking a look at Pirates in Major League Baseball, you have Alec Burleson, of course, with the St. Louis Cardinals. Burley, of last check, was hitting a little over 280. Um, 12 or 13 bombs, I think 13 to be exact now, hit his 13th the other night, I believe in Pittsburgh, and has driven in close to 50 runs. And over the weekend, East Carolina head coach Cliff Godwin was up in our nation's capital watching the Cards take on the Nats. You have Sean Armstrong. Sean is pitching for the Tampa Bay Rays as he has over the last few seasons. Had a very good 2023 this year. Hasn't been quite as good, but Sean Armstrong, nonetheless, is still a key cog for the Tampa Bay Rays. You have, as I mentioned earlier, with Bethany, you have Jeff Hoffman, who pitched in the Billy Godwin era. Jeff, undoubtedly, one of the better pitchers to wear the purple and gold. Jeff, in his second season now, excuse me, in Philadelphia with the Phillies. Last year had 54 appearances for the Phils, and this year is closing in on 40 appearances and has an ERA of right around 1.2, 1.3, and was named to the National League All-Star team. So congratulations to ECU baseball alum Jeff Hoffman. And then last but certainly not least, that fourth player currently in MLB is Gavin Williams. Gavin was just activated here a little over a week or so ago after a couple of minor league starts, and Gavin pitched pretty well in his first 3 innings against the White Sox, then was touched up a bit in the fourth, and is actually, if you're watching this live on Monday, July 8th, Gavin will be on the bump tonight, taking on the Detroit Tigers in Motown. Shifting to Pirates in minor league baseball, you have Connor Norby, who, as Bethany mentioned, was in the show back in the early part of June. I guess it was right after or during regional weekend that Connor Norby got the show call from AAA Norfolk. Has been one of the best players in the Norfolk Tides history, and has something like 65 or 70 bombs, if I'm not mistaken, with the Tide, and got that call up to Toronto for Baltimore and delivered that first big league hit in his second game, as he went yard, and he had another hit just a couple games later down in Tampa when East Carolina head coach Cliff Godwin and director of ops Blake Hardigree were there on hand at the Trop to watch not only Norbs, but then also get a look and watch Sean Armstrong, former Pirate pitcher, as well. The Pirates also have a few other guys in AAA. You have Carson Wisenhunt, and Carson Wisenhunt is, of course, in the Giants organization. Has steadily risen, through that organization, and is now in AAA Sacramento. Of last check, as of Monday morning, 2-5 with an ERA in the mid fives. But in 73 innings, he has struck out something like 95 or 96 batters. So do not be surprised, if not this season, maybe next, you'll have another Pirate in the big leagues with Carson Wisenhunt. You have Bryson Worrell, who's in the Braves organization, of course, signed with the Braves as a free agent. He has, he traveled a bit this year. He's been in pretty much every level of that organization, with the exception of the big leagues and rookie ball. He's been in A, Double A, and now Triple A Gwinnett uh, with the Stripers. So Bryson Worrell continuing to do big things, and who knows? As a Braves fan, the thought of Bryson Worrell, aka Sims, playing for the Braves, um, is extremely exciting. You have Jack Reinheimer. Jack was in the independent leagues, and actually, I was exchanging a few messages, with former Pirate third baseman Mark Minikazi, and I was curious if Jack was still playing, and found out that Jack was signed by the Chicago Cubs here in the last couple weeks, and assigned to AAA Iowa. And since being assigned to the Iowa Cubs, has delivered an inside the park home run. So congratulations to Jack Reinheimer on being once again a step away from the show. He has been in the big leagues, with a few different organizations, including the Seattle Mariners and the New York Mets, as you see in the picture on the screen for our viewers. You have Jake Agnos. He was released, unfortunately, back in April by the New York Yankees, but his brother, Zach recently got that call up to Double A. He is with the Hartford Yard Goats. Definitely excited for Zach. He's pitching so well out of the bullpen, and he has just been lights out. Um, Last year with Fresno, the Fresno Grizzlies. This year with Spokane, and now with the Hartford Yard Goats. It's great to see Zach um, continuing to pitch so well, and that's the thing. During his Pirate career, right until the end of that 2022 season, he had been strictly a position player for ECU, but we knew he had that potential on the mound. He came through in that 2022 Greenville Regional against the Virginia Cavaliers, and multiple times in that 22 postseason. But definitely continued to keep an eye on Zach, as he is once again at Double A Hartford with the Yard Goats in the Colorado Rockies organization. Carter Spivey, after not being drafted, not being signed initially, he signed with the Florence Yaws, one of a couple Pirates last year, or actually three Pirates, to go to Florence, Kentucky, uh, to play independent ball for the Yaws. And you had Lane Hoover. Lane made the decision to retire from baseball, and then Carter pitched so well in Florence that he earned the opportunity with the Cleveland Guardians, and is now in high A ball with the Lake County Captains. And then I'll mention that other Pirate that we have with the Florence Yaws here in just a moment. You have Josh Moreland in the Yankees organization. Josh, last I checked, was hitting about 255, 260 for the Hudson Valley Renegades. Had a very nice week. A couple weeks ago, they were playing Greensboro, the Greensboro Grasshoppers in Greensboro, and you had Danny Bill and his parents in attendance, and I'm sure a lot of other Pirates were able to get up there to Greensboro to check out the Hudson Valley Renegades and Josh Moylan. I think Josh had at least 2 home runs in that series against the Grasshoppers. You have Josh Groves. He's also in the Yankees organization. He is with the Tampa Tarpons, and you know, th- and then you have Trey Benton, one more Pirate with that Cleveland Guardians organization. Of course, you have Gavin Williams with the Guardians, and then as I mentioned, Carter Spivey and Trey Benton with that organization. And Trey is with the Double A Akron Rubber Ducks. Trey has pitched very well, this season. I think has an ERA somewhere in the twos or low threes, and a very good record. Has won 4 or 5 ball games for Double A Akron. Now moving on to the independent leagues. In the independent leagues, you have Ben Terwilliger, Benny T. You know, so much emotion from Benny T on the mound in that 2022 season out of the bullpen, and he is with the Florence Yaws, and is pitching very well. You have Mike Wright. Mike Wright was with the Baltimore Orioles, also I believe maybe with the Mariners. Has been with 2 or 3 teams in the show, if not more. And Mike is continuing his professional career, with the Gastonia Baseball Club. And then with the High Point Rockers, you have former Chicago Cubs organization product, and that is Wash. Jake Washer is with the High Point Rockers. Last I saw, as of a couple of days ago, Wash was hitting 275, 280 with 2 or 3 bombs, and had driven in about 20 or 25 runs. Moving from professional baseball to the summer leagues, as there always is, there's several Pirates playing in the collegiate summer leagues around the region and up and down the East Coast. We'll start with the one closest to home, and that is Parker Bird. He is, as Bethany mentioned a few minutes ago, with the New Bern Southpaws. Parker, uh, last I saw, as of a day or two ago, had gotten about 40 ABs, and in those 40 at bats, Parker had 7 or 8 hits. And the good news is Parker had only struck out 3 times, so he's putting the ball in play consistently. And all the best to Parker Bird. Looking forward to more ABs and playing time for Parker in 2025. You know, Shifting to the Valley League. In the Valley League, you have Colby Wallace and then also Nick Parham. Those two Pirates are with the Charlottesville Time Sox. Colby having a very good summer, hitting, I think, in excess of 300 last I checked. Nick Parham doing some nice things as well. In the New England Collegiate Baseball League, Dixon Williams, hitting not too far from 400. I think last I checked, he was probably 370, 380. And that was in about 60 ABs with the Newport Gulls. And also with the Newport Gulls, you have one of the newest Pirates, and that is Oklahoma transfer Brad Pruitt. Brad Pruitt logged about 10 appearances in his freshman season with the Sooners, and he has pitched magnificently with the Newport Gulls this summer. I believe his most recent appearance, definitely one of his last couple of appearances, was a start right after he committed to ECU, and Prue, I think, had 10 or 11 Ks in 5 or 6 innings in that start with the Newport Gulls. Also in the New England Collegiate Baseball League for the Ocean State Waves, Jackson DiLorenzo. In the Appalachian League for the Burlington Sock Puppets, Ryan McChrystal. Rhino has had an all-star summer. Literally, he was named to the Appy League East Division all-star team, and had the chance to play against Team USA up in Pulaski, Virginia here within the last week. Ryan, I think, was hitting right around 400, give or take, uh, maybe a bomb or two, and just an excellent summer for Pirate catcher Ryan McChrystal. We'll see what the MLB draft holds for him. That MLB draft, of course, and more on that in a moment, but it will be getting underway this Sunday, July 14th, and going through Tuesday the 16th. And he is one of a few Pirates to keep an eye on in terms of the draft and free agency to see who may or may not be returning for the 2025 season on this East Carolina roster. Also in the collegiate leagues up in Bethesda with the Big Train, the Cal Ripken League, Keenan Bowman was an all-star, or is an all-star. 54 plate appearances as of a couple days ago, 3 bombs, hitting 342, had just struck out 7 times. And then you also had his Pirate teammate and also teammate there with the Bethesda Big Train, Davin Whitaker. Davin, 313, 2 home runs, also 7 doubles, and then close to 20 runs batted in close to 100 plate appearances for Davin Whitaker. Also in that Cal Ripken League, you have the Crop Dusters playing for the Crop Dusters. You have freshman right-hander Michael Irby, who will be entering his sophomore season this fall with the Pirates. And his younger brother, Austin, will also be joining the ECU program. But Michael Irby, as of the last few days, was 1-0, had pitched 18 to 20 innings, allowed just 13 hits, struck out 18, and walked 8 for the Crop Dusters. And then his teammate, Jason Janesco, who will be entering his sophomore year this fall with ECU. Janesco hitting 250 with the home run, 8 runs batted in just over 40 plate appearances for the Crop Dusters. But yeah, that will do it for our Pirate Report. As far as summer leagues and professional baseball, let's now hone in on a few of the top memories from 2024 as we reflect back before we bring this first episode to an end. But some of the top memories from 2024 were actually not even on the field, but you had you had obviously, what wasn't on the field story with Parker Bird in that first AB back on February 16th against Ryder. You had everything with the homers that help. Carter Cunningham and his teammates just did a tremendous job, with that initiative, raising $50,000. It's crazy to think, but thanks to those young men and the ECU baseball program, Maynard Children's Hospital at ECU Health was the beneficiary and received $50,000 to shout out, excuse me, to Carter Cunningham and his teammates, for everything they did with homers that help. As far as on the field accomplishments, the Pirates, winning 46 games. That's a few times now that ECU has won 46 games in its history. So many great teams down through the years, but this year the Pirates winning a fifth straight American Athletic Conference championship, and as I said, winning 46 ball games. You think about Trey Savage, the year he had. He's going to be a first-round draft pick here in just a few days on Sunday. For we'll see. The latest projection has him going to the Chicago Cubs, but we'll see if Trey ends up in Chicago or Boston. Those two have been speculated and rumored a lot here in the last couple of days. And then you obviously had just a tremendous season. I talked about Carter Cunningham and what he did with homers that help. You had an unbelievable season on the field for Carter. Carter hitting right around 370, and I think 17 bombs was the final count. And obviously, just a heck of a senior year, for Carter Cunningham. So thankful that he withdrew his name from the transfer portal. After that, I guess 2022 season, but so many fond memories of Carter's time in the purple and gold. But that will do it for this initial episode of Jungle Tales, an ECU baseball podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media, on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, as well as on Spotify and SoundCloud. We can be found at Jungle Tales Pod. Simply search at Jungle Tales Pod, or tag ECU on the end of Jungle Tales Pod if you're not able to locate us. But again, appreciate everyone tuning in. We appreciate your viewership and listenership, and we'll be joined on episode 2. And I'm actually going to, during the summer months here, I'm going to break out an archive interview that I had from about 3.5 years ago, with a member of that 1961 NAI National Championship team, for ECU, or East Carolina College as it was at the time. I caught up with Earl Boykin, and we'll hear from Earl on episode 2 of Jungle Tales. Unfortunately, here, I guess about a year and a half ago, not quite 2 years ago, in that fall of 2022, we lost Earl Boykin, who was, like I mentioned, an ECU or ECC baseball alum, and then obviously so well known in the Wilton community, for everything he did in the sporting good business. But again, for Jungle Tales, I'm Bubba Rosenbaum. We appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Pirates.